All right, we're going to be throwing struts on this 2007 Honda Accord. I already did the driver's side because it had an axle that snapped in half, so we had to do... All right, I put an axle on. I put the strut on while I was on there. Both sides are basically the same, so we'll go ahead and do the passenger side. I'll kind of show you how to do the struts on these. I recommend getting a fully loaded strut with a spring and everything. This is a quick strut. I think this is Monroe. Yeah, Monroe quick strut. And that comes with the spring and everything. You can't get the struts without the spring, and then you got to pull them off and compress them and go through all that. And if you got 100, like this car's got 180,000 on it, springs are probably wore out anyway. So it's best just to save money, time, and labor, and get them all in one piece as a one-piece unit, so you don't have to mess with the coil spring compressors and all that. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you what to do on this. This has got the stupid Honda strut fork on the bottom. I'm not a big fan of those because a lot of times the bolts will seize into them and make more work for you. So I've already kind of loosened this side a little bit to see how it was, and it's okay. I actually broke the bolt off on the fork on the other side. I can show you that, and so that's why you got to be real careful with these. Almost better to put heat to them at first and maybe soak them down if it doesn't come loose right away. So I'll show you what happened on the other side, and then we'll start taking this side apart. So what you're looking at here is the strut fork for the other side. The strut goes down into this, and then this fork hooks to your lower control arm. And you can see right here, the bolt broke off. And the reason why that is there's a split right here, and rust builds up in there. And then the shaft, even though it's not threaded till this side, the shaft gets real rust and doesn't want to turn. And I've had this problem before. I don't know if I ever broke one off like this, but I have had it where they're pretty hard to get out. Same with the bottom. Sometimes the rust will build up, and they're pretty hard to get out. If it snaps off on the bottom, it's not that big of a deal. You just got to get a new bolt and nut. If it snaps off up here, you're going to be in more trouble because you're going to have to cut it, put a blade in here, cut it in half, and then drive this out and then drill and tap the other side. I personally didn't want to do that because I'd have to drill all the way through to this end, and then if it's already seized in there, it's not going to come out easy, and these are abundant in the junkyard, so I went to the junkyard and grabbed one. Pretty reasonable price on it if you go do it yourself and grab it. So I just went and took my electric tools and grabbed one from the junkyard instead of dealing with all that. So I just went ahead and replaced it and didn't reuse this one. But if you're in an area where you don't have a junkyard available, or you don't want to have to go to the junkyard, which I don't either, but sometimes stuff happens. But the best thing to do is soak these down ahead of time. Maybe put some penetrant grease in here and on the other side, and then don't use an impact on it right away. I would take a breaker bar and a long bar and just kind of go slow with it at first and make sure that it's going to come out before you snap it off. If it doesn't, then maybe use some heat on it. But I don't think it's super common on these, but it did happen on this one, and I've had a little bit of issue. The rust definitely builds up in this, especially if you're, we're in Missouri here, and they salt the roads in winters and all that stuff, so maybe if you're like in a real dry climate, you won't have any issue at all. But anyway, that's just my suggestion, so you don't have to go through this and replace that. So the first thing we're going to do is take these brake lines loose. You got 2 tens here, a 10 here, and then a 10 nut here. And the reason why we're going to do that is we're going to separate this knuckle here from the upper control arm. That'll give us enough room to get the strut out. You can see that strut's leaking already. The oil's leaking on it, so the strut's bad. I haven't actually drove this car, first time I worked on it, but it had a snapped axle, and he wanted to put struts on at the same time, which is fine with me. It's easy to, once it's all apart, it's easier just to do the struts anyway, so if you're taking the axle out. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and get the 10. We'll knock these out real quick, and then we'll pick it back up. All right, so I'm trying to kind of set you up where you can see everything. I'm going to go ahead and get these 10s off real quick. Need to get a little extension for this one. Sometimes people comment, like, I can't believe you used an impact on a 10mm bolt or whatever. And I would agree with that if you don't do it all the time or every day, but I've been doing this for a very long time, and I use the same tools every day, every single day. So I kind of know how to feather these tools and use them without breaking stuff. I very rarely break anything, if at all. And normally if I break it, it was going to break anyway. So anyway, that's why I use impacts on these kind of bolts. Every once in a while I get a few comments like, I can't believe using impacts on those bolts, dude. And if you've been doing it for a long time like I have, it's actually pretty common to do that. You'll see most mechanics or technicians do that. So we're just taking these loose so that we don't put any stress on the lines or the sensor, the speed sensor or the line, brake line. So now these are real loose, and we don't have to worry about breaking anything. So what I'm going to do next is take that bolt out that I was talking about that snapped off on the other side. I soaked it down and I already loosened it on this side, so it's going to come off real easy for me on this. But if you haven't done that, actually it's already loose. I didn't know it was that loose. So yeah, it's already out. But you can kind of see here, this is real grody, and on the other side, and a lot of times there's all this rust, really bad rust all through here, and then it just seizes this bolt in there. So that's why you got to be real careful with it. I'm gonna go ahead and get, I didn't realize it was that loose, but anyway, I did run it down. So I'm gonna get the 17 millimeter, and we're gonna do the bottom bolt that runs through the this fork on the bottom. It runs through your control arm, and we're just gonna loosen that up real quick. And these usually come out all right. Sometimes they'll seize in there as well. I guess it would help if I was going the right way. And what I'm going to do is just put that nut back on and use the hammer and just tap it a little bit and get it started. I'll get you down there and show you what I'm doing. I know the camera's probably not picking it up. So this is kind of what I was talking about right here. This bolt was, I was tapping on it with the hammer this way. It didn't want to move at all. So I took the impact and kind of loosened up the rust, and it broke free. And like I said, rust gets in there, and that breaks it free if you take the impact on the other side where the bolt's at. And I tapped it out a little bit. Now I'm just going to use my open end and my impact. And I'm going to just kind of use the open end as leverage against it to get it loose. So it's going to put it right there like that and just use my impact. That should come out. If you don't have an impact, it's going to be a little bit harder, but you can do it. You have to drive it out with a drift or something. So anyway, we'll go back up to the top now and get this upper control arm loose. So the first thing we're going to do is take the cotter pin out. These usually come out pretty good on these. Losing my light. And you can, if you don't have any cotter pins laying around, you can reuse it. It's not always the best, but if you're in a bind. And this should be a 17 nut, same as the lower bolt we took out. Hey. And I'm going to go ahead and put it back on a little bit, because I'm going to hit this knuckle with a hammer or a mile or whatever, and break this ball joint free. When you're doing that, you don't want to hit your boot or your upper control arm. It's kind of thin metal. You want to kind of hit like right here as much as you can. Usually, 4 or 5 good hits will knock it loose. There we go. I didn't count that, but I think it was close to 4 or 5. Now it's kind of stuck in there a little bit, but it's not bad. And we're going to take this nut off the rest of the way. Now, we might have to take the sway bar stabilizer link off. I'm not sure. I didn't on the other side, but I actually took this whole fork off. Let me see if I can pull it down far enough. Yeah, it's coming off, so we don't have to take that stabilizer, maybe. Just kind of hung on it right now. Sometimes you gotta tap them a little, again, because of rust. There we go. So I'm just gonna leave that right there, and then we'll go to the top and get those nuts out on the top, and then we can pull this strut out of here. So we got just a combination of nuts up here. We got some 14 millimeter. And I gotta switch my socket real quick. 2 12s. I don't know why they can't just use the same size all the way around, but they don't. Now, if you don't have anything, you know, it's loose on the bottom, so it's going to drop out of there. So you might want to reach around and grab it if you're worried about it. Shouldn't really do anything. This one's kind of hung up anyway, so we'll just go back underneath real quick and take it out. Laying on that fork down there, I just moved the fork a little bit and it fell right out. So that's out. We're just gonna get the new one real quick, and it comes with new nuts usually. So we won't reuse the factory nuts, and of course they're a different size. I think they're 13 and 14, or maybe no, it's 13 and 15. So they went up a size in each nut for some reason. They could never just use the same size as the factory. So anyway, I will get that, and then we'll set it in there real quick. All right, so you should be able to just kind of reach around, get it up through the control arm, and start a bolt or a nut on your own. You don't even need long arms, really. It's pretty easy. And I think these are supposed to be torqued around 45 foot-pounds, somewhere there, 42, something like that. I just do them until they're snug. Like I said, these are 15, and then they made 13s for the strut brace. And it may sound like I'm going crazy on that impact, but I'm not. So no need to comment. Believe it or not, we don't use torque wrenches on every single nut and bolt that we put back in. It's snug, it ain't going nowhere, and it's tight. Alright, so we'll go back underneath and finish this up. Alright, so I went ahead and slid the strut back into the fork here, and I just use a mirror, and I don't know if this is going to pick it up or not, but I use a mirror and make sure that that slot on the strut is lined up with the fork. That way it goes up all the way. You know it's seated. Just take a little hammer and just kind of tap it up. It should slide up pretty easy on a new strut. And just take your mirror or whatever. It's kind of hard to get your head back there. And make sure that the slot is in between the nub on the strut is in between the slot. And then you can just tap it up and then put your 14 millimeter bolt back in. So that's what I got going on right now. I'm just going to go ahead and get my 14 millimeter bolt and snug that back in. But you got to make sure that's up in there all the way and it's lined up with the slot on the fork. Go ahead and snug this bolt down. Don't have to go super crazy tight. I think the book calls for about 50 foot-pound, 40 to 50, somewhere in there. And I'm going the wrong way. And now we're going to get that bottom bolt lined up for the fork. And we may have to jack up the control arm a little bit, make it easier on us to do that. So I'll find out here in a quick and see. All right, sometimes when you got the slot lined up and the bolt in, this fork is angled real bad and won't line up with the control arm. And that's just because they didn't seat the strut perfectly straight with the spring or whatever whenever they assemble it. So I just put a big long pry bar in between the fork here and just turned it back to where you need to. It doesn't hurt the strut. It can turn inside there. So I just turned it so it lines up with the hole. So if you got yours and it's like way off whack, this one was like turned ridiculously to the left here where it would never line up. So anyway, if you got that going on, you can just put a long pry bar in there and turn it back the way you need to. Got a little bit of trouble lining at the bottom. That's because I tightened this bolt. Don't tighten that bolt real tight until you get the bottom lined up, because it kind of compresses that fork a little bit, just enough to make your life miserable. So leave it loose a little bit, and that'll kind of expand the fork enough to go over the bottom bushing. I should have known better, but usually I tighten everything up at once. I'm just going to tighten the bottom now, 17, and then the bottom will be done. And then the other thing too is you want to be careful not to pull your axle too much. If you want to, you can take your axle nut loose, and that'll kind of guarantee that your axle doesn't come apart. I've been watching mine because I've done a lot of these, but you want to be careful. So that bottom's loose. I'm going to go ahead and put a jack underneath this control arm, and then that'll give us enough to where we can compress that upper control arm back. Put a jack on the lower control arm so we can get the upper control arm back into the steering knuckle there. All right, once you get it jacked up far enough, you should be able to start that nut, and then we'll just go ahead and tighten it. Of course, you want to line up with the hole with the cotter pin. I actually think we're pretty close. Get the cotter pin real quick and put that in, and then we'll put the lines back on. We're done. That's pretty much it. Once you get your cotter pin back in, put all your bolts back in for your lines, and you're good to go. So that's pretty much it for struts on a 07 core. I think they're the same from like 03 to 07 or 08, something like that. The other side is exactly the same. There's not much different. There's no difference at all, actually. Just so anyway, that's about it. Like I said, the biggest hassle you're going to have is that fork down here. Those are, you know, sometimes they're hard to line up and they seize up and all that good stuff, but it's really not that bad of a job once you get into it. So anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, God bless.